Sometimes the people who feel the most uneasy around you are not the people who dislike you. They're the people who feel something around you that they don't know how to handle, not because you attacked them, not because you said something outrageous, not because you walked into the room with thunder in the background and a motivational speech playing behind your face. Sometimes it's much quieter than that. You're just being yourself, calm, competent, maybe a little reserved, maybe a little clear. Maybe you don't overshare much. Maybe you carry yourself with more self-respect than people are used to. And for certain people, that does something strange. It makes them stiff, a little weird, a little guarded, a little performative, like they're trying to act normal, but their nervous system already left the building and is standing outside by the recycling bins. And the hard part is, intimidation rarely announces itself honestly. Nobody says, "Hey, just so you know, your energy is making me confront my own unfinished business, so I may now begin acting oddly around the hummus." No. It usually hides behind tone changes, strange distance, unnecessary defensiveness, or little social moves that don't quite make sense until later. So, let me ask you something specific early on. What is one exact moment when you realized someone was acting weird around you for no clear reason? Not your opinion about them. The actual moment. Where were you? At work? At dinner? In a group chat? In a family kitchen while somebody was stirring pasta salad like it had personally offended them? Drop that in the comments, because specific memories usually tell the real story. Now there is a Jung angle here, but don't worry, nothing heavy. Jung believed that people often react strongly to qualities in others that stir up something unresolved in themselves. This simply means sometimes your calm, talent, confidence or self-respect presses on a bruise they were hoping nobody would touch. And once you see that, a lot of strange behavior becomes easier to read. So let's go straight into it. 1. They become weirdly defensive around neutral things. This is one of the first signs. You say something completely normal, and somehow they react like you accused them of tax fraud in front of a candle display. You make a simple comment. You ask a basic question. You mention something you're working on, and suddenly the person is over-explaining, correcting themselves, justifying everything, or responding with this odd edge that the moment didn't require. That's often intimidation hiding in plain sight, because when someone feels intimidated by you, they don't always feel less than in an obvious way. Sometimes they just feel watched, measured, exposed, not because you're doing anything, but because your presence makes them more aware of themselves. And people who feel exposed often get defensive early. Not after conflict, before it. You'll see it with somebody like Trevor at work, the guy with the expensive notebook he never writes in, and the coffee mug that says rise and grind like it's still 2018. You ask, "Hey, did that email go out?" And Trevor answers like he's on trial at The Hague. "Well, I was going to send it, but then I realized the attachment formatting could have created downstream confusion, so I'm actually optimizing the timing." Trevor, my brother, I asked a yes or no question. That kind of reaction tells you something. Jung would say the ego becomes defensive when it feels its image is under threat. Plain translation: if your presence makes someone worry they don't look as competent, settled or confident as they want to appear, they may start defending themselves before you even challenge them. And this is where people often miss the sign. They think, maybe they're just intense. Maybe. Sure, nothing dramatic. But if someone regularly reacts to harmless interactions like your existence just pressed the wrong elevator button in their soul, pay attention, because defensiveness is often fear-wearing business casual. Here's your first line to remember. Defensiveness often reveals what confidence would not need to explain. That's worth keeping. And speaking of things people don't explain directly, the next sign gets even stranger. Because sometimes intimidated people don't pull away from you at first. Sometimes they do the opposite. 2. They watch you closely but support you lightly. This one is subtle. A person who is intimidated by you may pay a lot of attention to you, without ever giving you the warmth that usually comes with real support. They notice what you're doing. They notice when you post. They notice when you speak. They notice when other people respond well to you. They notice your progress, your energy, your changes, your wins. But their support feels thin, not openly hostile, just oddly rationed. They'll watch your stories. They'll remember details. They'll ask questions. They'll keep tabs. But when it comes time to encourage you, celebrate you, or openly stand beside you, suddenly they turn into a part-time internet connection in a bad storm. You can feel the lag. This happens because intimidation often creates fascination and resistance at the same time. Part of them is drawn to what you are. Another part of them resents what your presence stirs up in them. So they stay observant, but emotionally cautious. Take someone like Serena from the old friend group, always carries a water bottle the size of a fire extinguisher, and somehow knows everybody's business while still saying, "I'm just in my own little world." Serena sees every update you post within 3 minutes. She remembers the city you visited, the project you mentioned, the person you were with. But when something genuinely good happens for you, suddenly all the enthusiasm leaves her body like a tenant who didn't renew the lease. That mismatch matters. Jung said projection often creates a charged interest in another person. In simple language, when someone is stirred up by you, they may study you more closely than they support you. And if you're thinking, wait, now I'm not allowed to have viewers? Is everybody who watches me intimidated? No, relax. We are not starting an international incident over Instagram story views. Nothing fancy. Just notice the pattern. Attention without warmth, curiosity without generosity, awareness without real goodwill. That usually means something is off. Remember this too. Some people watch you closely because your life reminds them what theirs is avoiding. And once you notice that thin support, the next sign becomes easier to spot, because intimidated people often try to quietly rebalance the room when your presence feels too strong. 3. They keep slipping little comments in to reduce you. This is a classic one. They don't insult you openly. That would be too obvious, and honestly, too honest. Instead, they make little comments, small reductions, tiny verbal pins they stick into the moment to let some air out of your confidence, your success, your clarity, or the way others are responding to you. You say something thoughtful and they reply, "Well, let's not get too deep." You get complimented and they add, "Yeah, but you got lucky." You mention progress, and they say, "Must be nice to have time for that." You carry yourself calmly, and suddenly they start calling you intense, serious, or mysterious, like you're a haunted bookshelf instead of a human being. These comments are rarely random. They are emotional adjustments. The person is trying to restore comfort in themselves by shrinking the effect you're having in the room. You see this with someone like your cousin Malik. Nice smile, good heart, but still wears that same leather bracelet from senior year, like it contains ancient wisdom. At dinner, someone says, "You've really got your life together," and Malik jumps in with, "Yeah, but they've always been a little obsessed." That right there. A small comment, a little twist, just enough to change the temperature. Jung might say the shadow often leaks out through seemingly harmless remarks. Plain translation: when someone feels intimidated, their discomfort doesn't always come out as a big attack. Sometimes it comes out as one tiny sentence designed to make you seem a little less impressive, a little less solid, a little easier to digest. And let's be honest, these comments can be almost comically transparent once you've seen enough of them. You'll be standing there doing absolutely nothing but existing in a fairly competent way, and someone will start throwing little pebbles at your image like a raccoon trying to test a porch light. That's not about you being too much. That's about them needing you to be slightly less. And if they do this often, don't overcomplicate it. Nothing perfect, just see it. Because the next sign is even more revealing. Sometimes intimidated people don't just reduce you with comments. They become oddly competitive in places where no competition was needed at all. 4. They compete with you in situations that were never a competition. This one is always a little surreal. You share a story, and they immediately top it. You mention a challenge, and now theirs is bigger. You say you've been working on something, and now they suddenly become the global ambassador of that exact subject. There was no scoreboard, no trophy, no referee, no opening ceremony, just a conversation. And yet somehow they arrived emotionally dressed for the Olympics. That often means intimidation is involved. Because when someone feels solid around you, they don't need to outdo every detail. They can simply be with you. But when someone feels threatened by your energy, competence, growth, or presence, they often start competing in these odd sideways ways. Not because they consciously hate you, more because their inner balance feels off, and comparison is how they try to steady themselves. So if you say, "I've been trying to get more disciplined lately," they say, "Yeah, I've been doing that for years." You say, "I'm finally feeling more at peace." And they respond, "Honestly, I've always been like that." You mention one book, one idea, one goal, and now suddenly they are standing there spiritually stretching before a race. Nobody asked them to run. There's always one person like Dana in every circle, the person with the tiny silver rings on every finger and a tote bag full of unread books, ready to turn your sentence into her documentary. You say, "I've been learning to set boundaries," and Dana says, "Yeah, I mastered that after my retreat in Portugal." You didn't ask for a TED Talk, Dana. You were just speaking. Jung believed that feelings of inferiority often trigger overcompensation. Plain translation, when some people feel smaller around you, they try to get bigger quickly, and sometimes the fastest way is to turn connection into comparison. Now, again, don't worry about diagnosing every enthusiastic person on earth. Some people are just expressive. Some people really do relate by sharing. That's fine. But if the person constantly needs to rise the moment you do, that's not connection. That's internal turbulence with accessories. And once you see that competitiveness, the 5th sign becomes much easier to notice. Because underneath all of this, intimidated people often become inconsistent in a very particular way. 5. Their energy round you is unstable, warm one moment, strange the next. This might be the deepest sign of all. A person intimidated by you is often not steady around you. One day they're warm, one day they're cold, one day they're engaging, the next day they're distant, one day they praise you, the next day they seem vaguely irritated by your breathing. That inconsistency is important because it usually means they are split inside. Part of them may genuinely like you, admire you even, but another part feels uncomfortable, inferior, exposed, or emotionally unsettled by what your presence brings up. And because they haven't dealt with that tension consciously, it leaks into the relationship as instability. You'll feel it with someone like Nina from the office, the woman with immaculate eyeliner and a desk plant that has survived longer than 3 of the company's departments. Nina is lovely on Monday, helpful on Tuesday, mysterious on Wednesday, quiet on Thursday. By Friday, she's complimenting your presentation with the emotional energy of somebody handing over a parking ticket. That swing tells a story. Jung might say that what is unresolved in the psyche creates contradictions in behavior. Here's what this means. If a person feels both drawn to you and threatened by you, their energy will often wobble because they are fighting themselves while talking to you. That's why intimidation can feel confusing, because the person is not always hostile. They may have moments of sincerity, moments of kindness, moments of admiration, but then the discomfort returns and the tone changes again. This is where you want to trust pattern over moment, not one weird day, not one off comment. The pattern. Do they consistently become strange when you're doing well, when others notice you, when you speak clearly, when you seem more self-assured, when you're less apologetic than usual? If yes, then their instability may not be random at all. And here's one last line worth keeping. When someone can't settle around your presence, it usually means your presence is unsettling something in them. That doesn't mean you become arrogant, nothing dramatic. It just means you stop blaming yourself every time somebody else starts moving strangely around your peace. And now let's bring all of this together. So what are the 5 signs someone is intimidated by you and hiding it? First, they become weirdly defensive around neutral things. Second, they watch you closely but support you lightly. Third, they keep slipping in little comments to reduce you. Fourth, they compete with you in situations that were never a competition. And fifth, their energy around you becomes unstable, warm one moment, strange the next. That's the pattern. And if this topic feels a little uncomfortable, that's okay. No need to turn it into a grand theory about everyone in your life. Just one simple question helps. Who gets odd around you when you are calm, clear, growing, or quietly confident? That's usually where the truth starts. Because intimidation is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like awkward politeness. Sometimes it looks like thin support. Sometimes it looks like unnecessary comparison. Sometimes it looks like energy that keeps changing shape because the person cannot get comfortable with what your presence wakes up in them. And that's the real point here. Not to make you suspicious of everybody, just to make you more accurate. Some people are not reacting to anything bad you did. They are reacting to what your energy makes harder for them to ignore in themselves. That is a very different thing. So let me leave you with one last specific question for the comments. What is one exact moment you remember when someone's tone changed around you for no clear reason? The meeting, the dinner table, the text, the compliment that turned weird, the silence after your good news. That one moment. That's the conversation I'd actually love to read. And if this spoke to you, comment. Not everyone who acts strange hates you. Or this. Your presence can expose what your words never said. Both are true. Both are worth remembering.